3 days into this specific parasite cleanse, I saw roundworm, flatworm, pinworm.
My name is Michael Rubino.
I'm on a personal mission to make sure you don't get sick inside your own home.
I knew there was something wrong. I'm just so relieved there's something that you can do about it.
Hello there. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Never Been Sicker. I'm your host, Michael Rubino, indoor air quality expert. And today's very special guest is Kim Rogers, the Worm Queen. Kim, thank you so much for being here and taking time out of your busy day to talk with us. I'm very excited to dive into this conversation, and thank you for coming on. Just if you want to give a little brief introduction.
Thanks for having me. My name is Kim Rogers, and I'm known as the Worm Queen. I went viral in 2021 on TikTok discussing a parasite cleanse that was helping me feel better because I was really sick at the time. And I didn't want to be known as the worm lady. So my community crowned me the queen, and I've just ran with it because it's fun. And it does describe what I do every day, talking to people about environmental toxins and worms and mold. And so, yeah.
All right. Well, I have to ask, how does one become the Worm Queen? What happened that led you down this path that, kind of created the exact person you are today, the business that you have that helps people? I mean, what does one go through to become out the other side and become that?
So in 2019, my health was declining rapidly, and we couldn't get any help from Western medicine, which I come from Western medicine. That is what I've been doing since 2004. I have 2 healthcare degrees. I was a professor. I ran 25 healthcare colleges. So this was really like my life. And in 2019, when I started to decline, we couldn't get anyone to help us. I had stage 4 endometriosis and hysterectomy and 13 surgeries. So I've really been through it on a personal level, and I wasn't getting any better. And basically they kind of just abandoned me and said, you know what? This is the way your life is going to be. And so you really just need to kind of figure out a comfortable place for yourself and go from there. And my husband and I were like, that's just not really acceptable to us. So we left our life we lived in Tacoma, Washington, and we left our life and we owned some recreational property out in Hoodsport, Washington. And so we decided to build our own log home and to heal me and to figure out what was going on. And if I could not get better, at least we were in a position where we were financially more stable, and my husband became my caretaker. So we just kind of pivoted our lives out there. About 2 years into that, I started to really not do well. I stopped going to the bathroom. And so I decided to scroll on TikTok. We had done a lot of holistic things like mushrooms, and it got me to a better spot, but it didn't get me to that oh my gosh, I am so much better with my health. So I came across this video that was talking about how worms almost unalived her. And she was like, I just did this cleanse and I felt so much better. And I was like, I've tried everything, right? I've done mushrooms now. I have completely gotten myself off of all my big pharma meds. And so I'm still not where I want to be. Why not give this a try? 3 days into this specific parasite cleanse, I saw roundworm, flatworm, pinworm, and I now know I had Cryptosporidium parvium, which is parvo. So I immediately took to my phone and I did a video, and it went super viral. And I saw this opportunity to really teach people. They were in my comments. 1 million people in 2 hours watched that video.
Wow.
It shut my TikTok down. It shut my phone down. And I looked at my husband. I was like, this is like a thing. There is something here that I'm talking about that I just did that other people need to know about. And what a great space for me to have done this in with medicine, right? Because I know the human body and I know what these herbs can do. And I'm like, I am going to talk about this. And I have not stopped since July of 2021.
That's incredible. Yeah, what an incredible story. And you were obviously very sick.
Yes.
And And you were dealing with any environmental issues that you had as well that were compounding with this, or?
Absolutely. I ended up finding out in this series of things that I've been doing over the last 4 years. I am I'm grateful that I have access to this knowledge as well as access to the tools. And that's why I do this every day, because I want other people to have access to the tools and access to this knowledge. So I have since found that we had parasites and we also were living in mold in our travel trailer while we were building. And so I went through this whole mold or this whole parasite cleanse. I started a company, RogersHood, where we make our own kit called Parify. And I started kind of digging into, okay, it's not just parasites, it's heavy metals. It's not just heavy metals, it's candida. It's not just that. They drop heavy metals and candida and they drop bacteria and viruses and they can make you sicker. So I'm like, how can I protect myself against all of this? And so then I got rid of a lot of my parasites. And then I found out I had mold poisoning because of the mold in my travel trailer. And then that led me down that I have chronic Lyme. So it was just kind of a series of removing that layer of the onion as I'm healing my body. And as I'm doing that, I'm actually telling people and teaching people and giving the people the knowledge so that they can go and test themselves and they can go and provide themselves with something like my kit, which is called Parify, because I found that this is just something in society that we don't talk about. We don't have this knowledge for some reason in Western medicine countries. And I spend every day finding new things and finding new ways. And so I feel like I want to better the human experience for other people and teach them about all of these environmental toxins.
No, thank you so much for everything you're doing and the stories that you're sharing out there. How do you think this all relates? The mold exposure, the parasite overgrowth, the bacterial overgrowth, right?
Mm-hmm.
Heavy metals, candida. I mean, I seem to see that people have mold. It's a pretty big problem in America,
Huge.
especially, right? And then they have heavy metals, and they've
Mm-hmm.
got parasites, and it seems to kind of all click together. And then, of course, people are dealing with pretty, severe symptoms as a result. How do you see this correlating? And is there a specific order to correcting this issue?
I feel like our environmental toxin buckets are overloaded. We are busy as a society. We never take breaks. We never let our bodies go into rest and digest. And we are overloaded with heavy metals. We're overloaded with water that's contaminated. We're overloaded with, like, I think they said like 60% of our buildings have mold in them, not just our homes, like the buildings you go into,
Right.
because of strict finals that you get when you're a builder. You have to seal your house completely shut and they do a blow test. Well, that just festers when you have condensation, you don't have correct ventilation.
Right.
So I feel like it's just something that society and the government have said, oh, this is not a problem. And then there's not the knowledge. And I openly admit on a daily basis when I'm talking to my community and I'm on these podcasts that I also didn't have this knowledge. And I also wrote curriculum. And this was just something that we would quickly talk about. We would quickly train our students and then we would move right on. And so if that knowledge is not given to the next generation or given to people that can do something with it, then it's just going to go stagnant. And I feel like we're at a place right now with this big movement of health and understanding that environmental toxins are real. But I don't feel like Western medicine countries have caught up to that yet. I feel like they're still stuck in the way of there's no way this could be an issue. There's no way that we could have 60 million people in the United States has parasites. There's no way. That's from the CDC. So that's not my own number. I believe that around 90 to 95% of society in Western medicine countries has a parasite. And I believe that when you compound that with all these other environmental toxins that we deal with on a daily basis, you're just creating more and more chronically ill people like myself. I come from this world. I have knowledge of how the human body works, but I didn't have knowledge of, okay, so heavy metals weigh down parasites. They live in your body, not just in your gut, but in your blood, your tissue, and your muscle. They can contribute to things like IBS, grinding your teeth, crazy, weird, like wanting salt cravings. And at nighttime, they keep you up all night because they're insomnia. We are just saying, oh, you have insomnia, you have anxiety. Like, we're not willing to go down to that root cause issue of what's going on. And so until we do that, we're really just going to keep band-aiding these problems. And it's such a simple solution where other countries like Mexico and Jamaica and Asia, they all know this is kind of an issue because they eat fish. They know their water can be contaminated, which our water in our country is not great. I've tested it around the country and they're aware of it. We're just not aware. And I'm not saying every single thing in life is a parasite or mold, but like, why not just start with something simple and do something like what I made, which is a really easy cleanse to do. And if you start to feel better and you can actually like get rid of the brain fog and really kind of get down deeper of what else could be going on, it's not like a bad thing for us to try that. And it's a taboo in our country. It's so weird. It's just like the weirdest thing I've ever experienced. And I come from medicine. So when I look at it, I'm like, but this is just like another ailment that you could have. And it's just such a big thing that they don't want to talk about. I'm willing to talk about it though.
I mean, they really have indoctrinated us so well,
Yeah.
right? It's like, you've got a headache, you take Advil or Tylenol,
Yep.
right? And you just don't ask questions as why you got the headache in the first place. Maybe you're just dehydrated. You needed some water.
Totally.
Yeah, no, it makes good sense. I mean, of course, from my perspective, I started to see, one, houses are not built properly.
Right.
They're not maintained properly. They're certainly not remediated properly, which is how I started my career. I saw lots of people get sick after Hurricane Sandy hit the Northeast. I was in my 20s. And what I had saw was remarkable because these people's houses were already repaired by these big billion-dollar companies. And it looked visibly like totally fine because it just was freshly painted. But once you actually saw the lab results, once you cut into the walls and pulled the curtain back, there's like crazy black, disgusting mold all over the place. Near HVAC systems, being drawn to the HVAC system. You'd ask the client, did anyone do anything with the HVAC system? No, it was never touched. It was never addressed, which obviously is not only the lungs of the home, but it gets grossly contaminated because it condensates. And so when I put all these pieces together, I'm like, this is not a good thing. Hurricanes and natural disasters happen all the time, every year, obviously. We have these torrential storms sometimes that come in and cause flooding in different parts of the country, right? So water intrusion is an issue just from a natural disaster perspective. But then you just take maintenance issues with roofs and windows, and things do leak over time. And then you take the issue of not building the home properly and then building it too tight, not ventilating it. It's already got mold because they didn't build it properly in the first place. Then they make it really tight. So you're basically breathing in that mold at a higher concentration than you normally would in a well-ventilated space. I mean, you start to see the problems compounding. And then, I'm constantly reading research on, heavy metals, constantly seeing parasites. I'm constantly seeing a growing population that has Lyme disease, constantly seeing a growing population of people with chronic illness, a growing population of kids with ADHD. Pick something and there's a growing population of it, right? This is a problem.
It's a problem.
How
can your body want to process these toxins out when it's so bombarded? It's so bombarded with just even mold, right? And the thing is parasites hold on to spores. And so when you're deworming, you're dropping spores. And that's kind of where like you're seeing all these trends that people are like, I'm going to parasite cleanse. And unfortunately, if you don't do it right and you don't do it with the right herbs, you can make yourself sicker. And that's kind of where it's like, let's step back and think about if they've been in the mold, like you're saying, right?
Yeah.
And it's a thing. This is really a thing. My husband was an HVAC engineer. We have built 4 houses together, like we did. We're actually building again. And people leave the building materials out, and they don't realize that they're leaving these materials out without the correct mycotoxin sprays. Like we sprayed all of our building materials while we were building our log home with Boracare to help prevent. And then we also sprayed our floor if there was ever a leak that would also prevent. And we did have a leak in our log home, and it prevented any mold from building up. So I just feel like we're in a society that, one, the knowledge isn't there. So I don't really feel like people are not wanting to do the right thing. I just think that they don't know how to do the right thing.
Sure. I agree with you there 100%. And the sad reality is we've never been sicker than we are today.
For real.
And if everything was working like it was supposed to be, that wouldn't be a true statement, right? And so
Right.
I think that's the biggest problem that I see is we're going in the wrong direction. We keep getting sicker. It's a growing population of pretty much every illness out there. And then when you look at it from that perspective, there's advancements in medicine every day. There's advancements in technology every day. Those advancements, though, are not equating to better health.
Right.
People can seem to have bigger sugar addictions than ever before, right?
Candida and worms.
Which, as that's what some of the research points to, right? Is if you've got overgrowth of candida, if you've got parasites, those feed off sugar. So that could be why we're having such sugar cravings. You've got obviously, our diet in America is not the best, I think, holistically. A lot of high processed foods that we eat and stuff like that can't help.
Our water.
Our water is not
our
the
water
cleanest.
Contaminated us. That's what happened. We tested our water. It came back positive for nematodes. Our country doesn't test our water for nematodes. You wouldn't go to Mexico and drink the water. Don't drink the water in our country.
Well, then if you want to go buy water, right, you're typically buying it in a plastic bottle, and then you have they sit in hot warehouses where the plastic leaches into the water, and then you're drinking water with microplastics in it. I mean, you can't win, right? And
or it's tap water that they just bottled and said, this is really great. And I think when we talk about all these things and people hear this, it's like, oh my gosh, well, what do we do? And it's like, well, you become proactive instead of reactive. Right. We're such a reactive country. We're reacting to hurricanes that are causing mold in a house. We're reacting to the water being contaminated. But it's really about you being responsible to be proactive and finding people like us that will tell you, teach you, give you the knowledge to be proactive. It's like as simple as going and getting a gotmold.com test and seeing exactly what mold is in your house. Or even like, what is it, like a $15 little Petri dish that you can get from Home Depot just to get an idea. And that's being proactive to see, okay, well, why do I have rashes all over my body? So for me, when I found out that I had mold poisoning, which I had Aspergillus niger poisoning and Cladosporidium poisoning, because that's what lives in the environment where my log home is. And I found out because I lost half my hair and my eyes started swelling shut, and I'm going viral on TikTok and Instagram over parasites, and I'm looking really rough. And I'm like, well, is it like, did my health take another turn? Like, what is going on? And so I immediately called my doctor and I said, I need to be tested for mold. I think we have mold. Like, looking back now, how did I not know we had mold in a travel trailer? You know what I mean? Like, you're not supposed to live in those things. And a lot of our country lives in that type of environment as well.
Totally. No, I mean, it's a huge problem. I mean, the indoor air quality that we're all breathing in, we weren't really configured to live in these boxes.
Yeah.
Certainly not these chemical filled toxic boxes that don't exchange air with the outdoors. We were meant to live outdoors, right? And so, it's definitely become a problem. A lot of people are becoming more aware of it, which is nice. Mm-hmm. And seeing how it all relates has been really interesting for me, right? Because there's always a confluence of factors, right? And I think that's what's been so hard to nail down. Now, we have so many great studies on mold exposure, mycotoxins, MVOCs produced by mold, and even, just the spores and fragments and how those irritate the human body. So we've got some good data, right? We've obviously got some good data on some of these other things, like what happens when you have candida overgrowth, what happens when you have parasites. I mean, I think pretty much many of us have been told, don't eat raw fish, you can get
Right.
parasites, you can get high mercury, right? And so you want to not say don't eat it ever, but eat it sparingly. Don't make if you're a sushi lover, don't eat sushi 3 times a day, right? It's probably a good thing. I personally eat cook rolls, so that's how I kind of get away
Same.
from it. But,
Now I do. Oh,
yeah.
I miss it though. Like I can't even get past the salmon. Like salmon was like a 2 to 3 timer a week for me and my husband. And then I started going viral and I started looking at all the foods. And even though I come from this environment, I really didn't know that, oh my gosh, like 10,000 eggs can live in a square inch of salmon. I had no idea. This just wasn't something that was really ever on my radar. So,
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy stuff, right? Just like
yes.
250,000 spores of mold can fit on the head of a pin. I mean, we're talking about stuff that is so tiny that we're not aware of it, right? We don't see
Mhm.
it. We're not aware of it. Not a lot of people are talking about it. And then you go to the doctor when you don't feel well, and they're more so, what symptoms do you have? Okay, here's the pills that handle those symptoms. It's
Right.
not like, hey, let's take a look at what caused those things. And I think that's been, obviously a big part of the problem. And the tide is changing. Right? I think
Mhm.
more and more people are interested in root cause medicine. More and more people are changing, to help address the root cause of things and not just specifically go right to, it's like pharmaceuticals. Right? They can be helpful, especially if you're dealing with
Right.
debilitating symptoms, for sure. Don't want to discredit that. It's just that if we're going to have a plan to get on pills, we also need a plan to get off them. Right.
Right.
And that plan to get off them doesn't exist without actually addressing the root cause of what allowed it to grow in the first place. Same way that I address mold in somebody's home. It's like, well, if we want to get rid of the mold, we have to figure out what also caused the mold to grow in the first place, right? And
Yes.
so it becomes an investigatory thing. There's a process. You get an inspection company in, they figure out where it's coming from, why it's happening. You address it with remediation and making sure as part of the remediation strategy, those things are being implemented as well. And so if you don't do those things, right, what ends up happening is it all
Mhm.
comes back because you didn't address the root cause. And so it's just the same philosophy needs to be applied to the human body. I'm
Yep.
not sure why it's
Exactly.
taken so long to apply it, but
I don't either. It's the weirdest
it's
thing because I really believe we should have better testing. Why is it such a thing that okay, so for me personally, I had to get tested by an independent lab for parasites. And I actually used the same stool with LabCorp as I did the independent lab. And LabCorp missed everything. And the independent lab came back positive, but it got sent to Mexico. Like, why? And with mold, why is it like we can't have that medical freedom to allow us to have affordable, better testing? Like, I should be able to go in and be like, listen, I think that I went to another country and I drank ice and now I think I might have a parasite. I'd like to get tested. Like, why isn't that something in our country that we as humans are allowed to do? And I feel like that's kind of where a change should be made in our country to allow us that freedom and allow us to have actual accurate mold and parasite, and if not, Lyme testing. Because I'll tell you, since I've gotten into the Lyme world, because I have chronic Lyme and I've had it for over 30 years, I was misdiagnosed every chance you could get. I'm 46 years old. I found out when I was 45. So I've only known for a year.
wow.
And I've never really been around a lot of people that had Lyme. And now I've kind of orbited into that world, but everybody I know has Lyme. And I'm like, that's just so bizarre that it took this long, and that mold and parasites are a co-infection of something like that environmental toxin. These are all environmental toxins. And
Yeah.
it's like when Western medicine continues to deny that mold exists and that you can get it in your body and it colonies in your body, creating so many different ailments. And then parasites can easily be caught. They're almost like magnets together. They party together. They love to be around each other. Like, I think if we can just get past that denial as well as have actual testing, I want actual testing. Like, I don't want to have to have gone and dug into the despair of the internet to find multiple different sources in order for me to be able to find out what my actual root cause is.
Well, I think also with the internet evolves pretty quickly, right? You've got TikTok, you've got Instagram, you've got all these different social media platforms. And at the end of the day, people post a lot of information on there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's nice to be able to understand and validate what it is. Because, you and I can have pretty similar symptoms, but two very different things, right? And so testing instead of guessing
Right.
allows us to understand, well, okay, even though we might have similar symptoms, we might have similar issues going on, right? Even with parasites, there's different types of parasites, right?
Right.
And so I could have a different type of parasite affecting me. You could have a different parasite affecting you. Maybe it doesn't make a difference in the world of how you get rid of it, but it's just interesting to see and to be able to look at that scientific data to say, okay, this is what it was for me. I mean, I see the same thing with mold in people's homes. They have
Yeah.
different, people have similar symptoms, but they have different molds that they're actually reacting to.
But it would
And
be
you,
nice to even know what those were, and I
yeah,
know with like parasites, they're very difficult to find out because they know how to, they're evaders. They can hide and they know how to do this and they know what cycle. And so it just would be nice if we had that opportunity, even with different molds. They're all treated very similarly. I actually have a mold kit because of my mold poisoning, and it was really hard to cleanse from mold, to
right.
actually be able to sit down and be like, okay, so I'm going to take this in the morning and I'm going to take this at night. So instead, I just created a very simple like cleanse. It's called Moldies. And I found all of the herbs that I actually use to help push some of these spores out of my body. And so I actually have like a parasite kit. I have a mold kit. I'm getting our lymphatic kits dropping. And it's really about how you synergetically use the herbs together to assist your body to get through some of the brain fog and the fatigue and really be able to kind of focus on even deeper healing. But you just need a break sometimes when you're going through these environmental toxins. But I think where it should start is really we need to have some accurate available testing for our bodies. And not just, I mean, there are some companies out there, but like most people have insurance and most people look at Western medicine. And you said this earlier, I love Western medicine. I just don't love it for if you're wanting to heal your body. They're not here to heal you. And I come from the world and I can tell you that, we found what a diagnosis was and we found what pill meets that diagnosis. That's how we learned in academia, is if you had diabetes, what's going to be the best, you know, diabetic medication for you? How
Yeah.
are we going to treat it? How are we going to show you what to do? And so I just feel like this knowledge is just so deeply hidden, and there it really doesn't need to be. But back to the mold, because honestly, you can get yourself to a level where you can push some of that out with really just like a simple grabbing some herbs. Ours are tinctures, so that we have a better availability when you take some herbs. We actually like tinctures. I like tinctures a lot better than I do like pills.
Totally. Yeah, no, very, very valid points. I think there's a lot that we need to evolve in just medicine in
Hmm.
general, and like I said, we're seeing that tide change, which is nice. And I agree with you wholeheartedly. We need better testing across the
Hmm.
boards, especially testing of different things that Western medicine maybe hasn't looked into as much, hasn't studied as much. Testing for things that might not be solvable by pharmaceuticals and might actually require change in diet or, detoxing, things of that nature. I
Hmm.
understand they don't have a market for it, so they're not investing in the testing, but hopefully
It's
some of these labs will, right?
And it's crazy because I run a business that is a cleansing business and we are so busy. So it, to me, when I think about all of this, it's a wild concept. We have a 10,000 square foot manufacturing facility. I have 30 team members. We've been running this business since 2021. We literally are this busy. And I talk about all these other companies that can third party test you and test your body. And it's like, they're really, if you're looking at it in a overall grand picture of it all, it is very profitable in a way because you're helping people. I just think it's not a continuation. Like, people will cleanse, people find out what's going on, and then it stops, right? Like, they don't need to continue on these things. And what they do in Big P is they want you to continue for the rest of your life. And
Right.
so, in that side of things, definitely that's where we have the biggest issues with Western medicine. But I feel like the indoctrination that we've all have as a society with Western medicine countries is the issue. I do think that when people look at like what's gone on in Mexico with their water, they think, oh my gosh, I just won't drink their water. But you're showering in their water when you go and visit, you're brushing your teeth, the produce that you're eating, if it's raw, that's been put in their water system. So it's like, it's the same with us though. Like, literally, it's the same. I was brushing my teeth with my water. I was showering with my water. So yeah.
I mean, literally, they're like Tylenol, Bayer, like all these, aspirin companies. Like, they're literally marketing to people saying, if you should, even if you don't have a headache, you should just take this stuff. It's great for your heart.
Right.
And it's like, we've really been sold down the river in terms of like how we view medicine and the pharmaceutical world, right? Obviously, we've been sold down the river a little bit with our food supply, with our water supply. We're obviously all waking up to this stuff. But I think the other thing we've been sold down the river on is the fact that our environment plays such a critical role in our health. And we've just been gaslit like you wouldn't believe on that front. I mean, you go to a doctor, you're asking them, hey, can environment play a role? If they're not an environmental medicine doctor, odds are they're going to tell you, no, nobody ever. That's rare,
Right.
It's not rare. 60% of the houses we're living in are problematic, right? You also, you start to look at some of these other things. Is it possible what I'm eating, doc, is part of the equation? Eat less sugar and you should be fine. I mean, you get high LDL these days. They want to put you on a statin right away, right? And
Yep.
it's especially some of the diets people are transforming into. Like, let's say you're on carnivore. There's no way you're on carnivore and don't have high LDL, right? And I think you have to look at high LDL in the same light as, okay, what are the other biomarkers that should coincide with LDL that might actually mean that it's okay? Because I think it's from Western medicine standpoint, we tend to hold on to these little things like, all right, high LDL statins, headaches, Tylenol, right? You've got all these different things of, if you have this is the recommendation. It's proper standard of care. Well, is it time to revisit that proper standard of care? Is it time to say, is this proper standard of care actually addressing the root cause? I mean, a statin just lowering the LDL, what's that going to do? I mean, once you get off the statin, the LDL is going to go right back up, right?
Right. Unless you find out why. Like, a lot of people that have high LDL actually have some mold in their body creating that high level. They actually treat people with mold poisoning with lowering your LDL because it's like a sticky substance that allows it to glue itself together. So there are things out there that you can do proactively in order for you to kind of lower it before you did go on a statin. And all a statin is doing is it's a frequency that goes in and assists with that ailment. So if you can identify what frequency issue you're having, you can go in and help that ailment. It's like an opera singer singing and she gets her voice to a point where she can break glass. It's because the frequency of her voice is breaking and shattering that glass. That's all Big P has done. They've realized the frequency of the ailment. They've synthesized the frequency of the solution, and then they give it to you. And it's just that solution. All it's doing is going in and masking that solution. And I realized when I had the mold poisoning, I was like, why am I taking this cholesterol medicine? I have mold poisoning. So I started looking into it. And I'm like, oh, because it's sticky. Mold is, magnetizing to anything I'm basically eating at this point. It's gathering all of the things that it needs to gather in order to continue to survive. And it's living in my plasma. and my plasma and my LDL are very similar. They're sticky. And so I need to figure out a way to go in and break that down naturally, because the side effects of what was going on with the medication that they were giving me for the mold detox wasn't working for me. And so I was like, what else can I do here? And I just started like literally digging into it. And it's like, I feel if people were to do kind of the same thing, right? They dig into their bodies, they figure out what's going on, they would have a better opportunity to heal their root cause issues. And even if that's not even your problem, maybe you've had some exposure, but you don't actually have mold poisoning, it's still sometimes spores, because we're such a stagnant environment, can actually sit and fester in your body and you don't even know it, because we're such a stagnant environment.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, I take it that you have some similar curiosity to what I have. I mean, I saw all these people getting sick after Hurricane Sandy.
Yep.
I started to ask questions. Why are we remediating this way? Why is the industry standard of care tell you to do this? Why aren't we dealing with the HVAC systems? What about the byproducts, the mycotoxins? Why aren't we talking about that, right? Many different things that many different questions came up for me as I started to learn the industry before I could master it. I had to understand what do I need to learn here? And then also not just what do I need to learn to do standard practice, but what's missing, right? I mean, the amount, like literally you would have a home flood and they would just be like, they would just do a flood cut and they would just spray some chemicals, and that was remediation. Yeah, that when you asked like, well, what about the mycotoxins? What about the spores and fragments that traveled up from the first floor to the second floor? What about the HVAC system? It just wasn't talked about. It was like, no, don't worry about mycotoxins. That's not a thing in homes. That's a food thing. What do you mean it's a food thing? The mold produces mycotoxins, right? Yeah. But you worry about that in food. Like I was basically like told to just leave it alone.
Right.
And I couldn't leave it alone because I was like, this doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, we're talking these are real things that affect real people in their homes. And I'm watching people do mycotoxin tests and I'm watching their mycotoxins level increase. I'm watching them complain about symptoms. And then I'm watching the mycotoxins, the same ones in their body, in their house. So I don't know. I mean, maybe it's from food, but pretty interesting correlation there. And then I'm also watching those molds that produce those exact mycotoxins elevated in their house. And then I'm opening up walls and I'm visually seeing the stuff behind the wall. And I'm opening up HVAC covers and I'm visibly seeing the stuff growing in the HVAC system. But yet, like, that curiosity that I had would have never been able to develop a protocol to help people if I didn't have that curiosity, right? I think I invite anyone listening to have that same curiosity with anything they do, right? And I think some of us get labeled as like conspiracy theorists, right? When we ask questions. I mean, listen, if you think that's a conspiracy theorist, fine by me.
Right. I'm good with that.
I don't really care about labels particularly.
Me either.
To ask questions,
right.
I think is part, and being curious, I think is God's gift to man.
Yeah.
This is how we evolve.
You have to be your own advocate.
I mean, if we don't think for ourselves and ask questions for ourselves to make choices, and listen, sometimes you're going to ask a question, you're going to make a choice, and it's going to be the wrong choice, right? It's going to happen. It's part of life. But you know what? At least asking the questions, getting the feedback, and trying to make the best educated decision for you, for your family, etc. That's the best you could do. But that's part of evolution. You could follow the herd. Or you can say, well, why should I follow the herd? And is following the herd the right solution?
And is that whole herd sick?
And is that whole herd sick?
I don't want to be sick.
Right? And am I dealing with am I dealing the same thing that the herd's dealing with? Am I dealing with a different issue? Like, there's a lot of different questions. I think the solution always comes down to the quality of the question that you ask. Right? And so, try to ask good questions and you'll find good answers typically. And I think one of the biggest things that you should be asking right now is, why is everybody so sick despite the advancements in medicine and technology? Why? Why is everybody so sick? Obviously, the answer is we're not catching on to the right thing.
Right.
The herd has not figured out the right problem to look at. We're not looking at the right problem.
And it's people like us that are going to continue to help people understand that there is a problem and that we're not just saying this is a problem. We're saying this is the problem and here is actually a solution. Here's something you can try. And if it makes you feel better, then that could be one of your issues. And not all of the people have parasites and that's their only issue. But if you eat sushi and you eat raw meat and you eat produce out and about and you've gone to another country, you probably have a parasite. So why not go in and like nip that in the butt and then figure out what else it could be? Were you exposed to mold at a high level? Like my husband is an HVAC engineer. He was exposed to mold for 20 years. We had mold in our travel trailer. And you know what the first thing my husband said was when I said, I think we have mold in here? There's no way we have mold in here, Kim. And I'm like, but I think we do. And then I started pulling everything away from the wall. And I said, Jeremy, this is mold. And there's a thing called a mold hold. It's real. Mold is its own frequency and it collects in your body and it can tell you, it brainwashes you. Parasites control you and mold brainwashes you. And it can brainwash you to a point to think that there's nothing wrong so that it can continue to colonate.
Engineers, by the way, are my favorite clients. It takes them the longest to get there, but when they get there, man, do they get there? Right? They're like, I'm creating the solution for this right now. You know?
Oh, totally.
But it's like, no, let me think, because it's, you know, engineers are taught very structured.
Yeah.
And so it's like they have to go through this exercise mentally to get there. And so it takes a little bit longer. You would think engineers, if they get there shorter. No. It's actually the opposite, because they've got processes that they follow, that it takes them a little bit longer to get there. But once they get there, they're like, die hard, I want to fix this problem. Every single engineer I've ever worked with
is die hard. And it's funny because I blew his mind when we tested our water and it came back positive, because he thought the same thing that everyone, I mean, I've taken the water thing to the state. Like, that's how serious all of this was. And I told him, I'm like, I think it's in our water. When I first went viral in July, I was not getting that much better, but it was enough that I knew and I saw in the toilet what was going on. And so I said, I think it's in our water. Well, he kept using the bidet that hadn't had any filter on it. And I'm like, I'm not using that anymore because I think we have worms in our water. And he was like, no. And then it was like 3 months later, we tested it, came back. He didn't even speak for days because he's like, how is this possible? And you could see it just blew his mind. And then it was like 6 months later that I found the mold in the house or the trailer, and it blew his mind again. We packed ourselves up immediately after I was like, listen, I'm leaving. I love you. I need you to go with me, but I cannot stay in this place anymore. Like, it's killing us. Like, that's mold, Jeremy. And he's like, no. And I'm like, I'm leaving. Let's go. Like, literally, we're leaving right now. Like, you can't bring anything. You have to leave it all because it all has spores and it's contaminated. So it took about an hour, but he finally saw the light. And as soon as he started to do mold avoidance with me, like, his whole demeanor changed. He wasn't nearly as exposed as I was because he was out building our log home. So he was outside. He has an APAP machine. So he was getting some filtered air, where I'm chronically ill and I was sitting in my chair all day, not really ever leaving. And it was just making me worse and worse, where he was at least getting some fresh air when he was going outside to build. And so now we're actually allergic to the air at our log home, which is very sad. We can't go out there and we don't really know what we're doing right now because we went out one day last week and I have not felt the same since because the air is so full of those spores. We live in the outskirts of a rainforest, so it's moldy and damp and there's moss everywhere and it collects those spores. But the inside of our house is perfect. We have our air tested twice a year just to be, prophylactic with ourselves because we don't want to go in and have any more issues. But unfortunately, when you're exposed to something like an environmental toxin like that that's trying to kill you, it really is a difficult thing to go around it again. Some people, like in Arizona, that have valley fever can't live in Arizona anymore because they were exposed to that or it was at a poisonous level. But I saw, going back to the engineer thing, I literally saw my husband going through all of the steps of like, okay, what do I do to fix this? How do I go forward with this? What do I do next? Like, as soon as he openly admitted to himself that this was actually what was going on with us, he stopped and then he started going through that critical steps of what do I do?
Totally. Yeah, and it's tough. I mean, once you get sick from mold, you obviously become hypersensitive to it, and
Mhm.
it really can be tough, especially being in a log cabin and in the middle of a rainforest. It can be pretty tough to keep that environment perfect, especially
Yeah.
considering you're always have some exposure to the outside and probably a high mold count outdoors. I'm sure, just
High.
considering. Yeah, so
It's so high. That's the cool thing about the testing that I've found through other companies is at least having an idea of what the environment that I would be living in is, which going back to this whole why don't we have, more opportunities to do all of this? And I feel like that would be such a good start for, well, we're all chronically ill. And so what could we have access to in order to help our health and better education? To be honest with you, because I come from education, it wouldn't be that difficult. It just
totally.
really wouldn't. All they would have to do is mandate CEUs for the medical world and say, like, you are required to take this environmental toxin, break it down. Here's what, if you feel that one of them, or just make this mandatory, like you get your yearly exams. Why not make somebody get a yearly standard stool test and a year, and look for it and actually have like really good labs? I taught lab people, so I know what it looks like to have them look at your stool, and it's just not sufficient. It's
Right.
not sufficient for them to look at you have to physically have your doctor draw your blood and look at each individual mold. It's not like there's an overall standard of care that we have in Western medicine. And I
Right.
feel like that's where it's failing us. It's failing us as a society that relies on Western medicine because that's our actual like indoctrination that we have. And I feel like it should be a standard of care. And it really wouldn't be that difficult to implement it. I ran 25 healthcare colleges. I wrote their curriculum. I built them from the ground up remotely. And it's like, I know that you could slowly put this type of curriculum back into the education system. You can mandatory make it for a few years for CEUs. I used to have to take continuing education units that were mandatory because OSHA would update something or we'd have a new CLIA policy. All of these things can be mandatory for our allied health and our doctors, and have them be more open-minded. It doesn't have to be such a closed-minded subject. We don't need to have people looking at us going, ugh, parasites. Like, yeah, it's a real thing. You go outside, you walk barefoot, you have a pet, the pet licks you, you deworm your dog. Why aren't you deworming yourself and your family? You're letting them lick you. I had a dog that had the same parasite as me. The same parasite as me. You share your own microbiome within your house. All of you have the same similar microbiome. Everything can be done through the air. So why not look at it? Like, it's so
Yeah.
sad that a vet tech can go and look at the dog's poop and know instantly that the dog has worms, but you as a human can't go to a lab and have them look at it instantly. And some people, please don't do this, but some people will send their stool to the vet because their doctor will not believe them. And they
Wow.
immediately have gotten diagnosed and taken the same synthetic antiparasitic, where like you go into Mexico and you can go to the pharmacy and for $7 you can get an antiparasitic. You can go to Mexico and get Lyme treatment. Like, Lyme is a thing. This is a thing. It burrows deep into your body. It's also a parasite. It lives with mold. Most people that have parasites in mold also have Lyme, and it can act like MS. It can act like Parkinson's. I mean, why not find out what you have going on in your body prior to getting that huge label? And that's what started with me. I did not want another label, and I was being labeled with Parkinson's, and I did not want that label. And I had had so many other labels. I had endometriosis, adenomyosis, 13 surgeries, a hysterectomy that still did not help me. And I was 29 when I had it. And so now I'm going for testing to get a label of Parkinson's at age 41. And I looked at my doctor and I said, I just want off all of these meds. I want to know, before you go and label me and put me on another medication, what is actually going on with me? And so I just couldn't do it anymore. Like, it is all insurance, right? And it's all a Band-Aid. So I just started digging. I just started looking, and I realized that we had lived in mold before the travel trailer, because we've remodeled homes, and all the homes we remodeled all had some sort of water damage. So it wasn't just that moment of us living in that travel trailer, building our log home. It was prior environmental toxins that were trying to eat me. And that's why I created a podcast called What's Eating You? Because, what's really eating us?
I mean, it's a great name for a podcast, because
Thanks.
obviously,
It's super fun.
yeah. Obviously, what is eating us, right? Kim, I wanted to thank you so much for taking the time to be here today. But before we go, of course, where can people find you? Where can they learn more information about your detox programs, and all the different things, the education you put out there and everything like that?
You can find me on Mrs. Rogers, MRSROGERSHOOD, on all of the social media platforms, Threads, YouTube, TikTok, and then on Instagram, I'm Mrs. Rogers.hood. And then my website is RogersHood.com, where we have third-party tested, organic, and ethically sourced herb tinctures, parasites, mold, the lymphatic, and a support kit. And you can find all of that on our website, as well as free information. All of my knowledge is free. You can download all of the ebooks are free. We have groups that you can join, and I do Zoom calls once a week.
That is so awesome. Yeah. Thank you for doing all that. Thank you for taking the time to be here today.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. And, we could have kept this going for sure. So we'll have to have a part 2 at some point.
Yes. I would love for you to try our kits.
Absolutely.
And then come back and talk about them.
Absolutely. Talk to you soon. Thanks so much again. And thank you for listening.
Thanks for having me.